Hello, good evening, and welcome back. My name's Don Arleth, and you're watching World Talks here on TVP World. Donald Trump is not joking when he says he wants Greenland for the United States. Now he has upped the ante and imposing a 10% tariff on several European countries who sent troops to Greenland in solidarity with Denmark. They will take effect on February 1st and will be increased to 25% on June 1st if nothing changes. And now joining us to discuss this potential land grab is Marc Lanteigne, professor at UiT, the Arctic University of Norway. Hello, Marc, and thanks so much for joining us on World Talks.
Good evening. Thank you.
Yes, now the European Union obviously is pretty upset over these potential tariffs that may be slapped on these countries that supported Denmark. What do you think the European Union should do in response?
Well, there's been a lot of discussions now because, as you note, many of the countries being threatened with tariffs are European Union members. So there's been discussion now about whether the European Union should retaliate. This has been referred to as the bazooka, so reciprocal tariffs against U.S. goods, should these American tariffs actually be implemented. This would be a pretty serious uptick in European Union activity against the United States using tariffs should this happen.
Right. Now, we are expecting further negotiations there in the United States with Danish officials and Greenlandic as well this coming week. Do you think that this is starting to spiral out of control? Do you think that the diplomats have already agreed potentially on at least the course of diplomatic talks?
Yes, it's been a difficult few days. There was some hope that the meeting between American, Greenlandic, and Danish officials in Washington, as well as some attempts by members of the American government to go to Copenhagen, would lower the temperature. But now this tariff announcement has not only pretty much negated that, but now it's really beginning to look like the U.S. is not adverse to using economic pressure in order to set up some kind of annexation of Greenland. So European governments are understandably upset at this, and certainly there is some discussion about what might be done next, because it does not look like the U.S. is dropping this matter.
Right, it certainly doesn't. Now, hitting with these tariffs, do you think that may cause that might drive a wedge in between some of these European allies that were showing solidarity with Denmark? We are told that the German contingent left less than 24 hours after it arrived there in Greenland. May some countries say, I don't want to be targeted by Donald Trump and his tariffs, therefore leave Denmark kind of by itself to deal with this?
Yeah, it is difficult because last year, after a great deal of negotiation, the European Union had settled a tariff deal with the United States. And now there is discussion that that agreement might go into abeyance under current circumstances. This is obviously causing a lot of concern in some European capitals. They're now faced with a very thorny, difficult decision as to whether to continue to support Denmark, to continue to show European solidarity, or to take steps to protect their economies. Because certainly this level of tariff being threatened by the United States could have a significant impact on several economies in Europe. So we might be seeing, yes, some cracks in the European Union's approach.
Right, and as you mentioned, the agreement between the United States and European Union could just disappear, I guess, for a little while or not go through. Which adds to the current economic chaos as a result of those tariffs. How about Denmark trying to get through this and get the maximum that it can from a Donald Trump who wants to buy Greenland, excuse me. I mean, is that idea being entertained at all?
Well, certainly not in Denmark and certainly not in Greenland. There was really the hope in Copenhagen especially that this threat to annex Greenland was some kind of opening move to what would be a deal potentially to, let's say, improve the American security presence or to set up some kind of deal that would allow for American mining, perhaps of rare earths. But despite the fact that the Danish and the Greenlandic government, they have said many times that they are very much open to the idea of increased NATO and American military presence in Greenland, that does not seem to be satisfying the Trump government. So the space for negotiation is shrinking, apparently, unless something else can be discussed, unless another type of deal can be worked out. But as of today, that's not looking likely.
I'm interested also on how Russia and China can use this to their benefit, at least rhetorically or within the soft power sphere, informational sphere. How do you expect them to react to these developments?
Well, one of the justifications that President Trump has given, including on his social media account, is that Greenland is in some sort of imminent danger from Russia and China, from their militaries, despite the fact that there's no evidence of this. Now, the Russian government has already called upon the United States to lower its tone. And the Chinese Foreign Ministry put out a statement last week saying that please don't use us as an excuse to engage in this kind of activity in the Arctic with Greenland. Certainly, the possibility of NATO being damaged or fractured over this, this certainly creates a problem regarding a united front against Russia. So you can bet that both Russia and China are watching this very carefully.
And do you think, like in Russia's case, I mean, would this be advantageous actually for them to see a type of land grab of this nature? I mean, it's essentially very similar to what they're trying to do or attempting to do in Ukraine.
Yeah, this is important on two fronts because the Danish government has been very direct by the fact that any kind of forcible taking of Greenland would effectively end NATO or at least severely damage it. And this would obviously put any kind of united front against Russia at a disadvantage. Plus the fact that if the United States were to engage in this kind of land grabbing, how would this create an aftershock in the sense of Russian actions against Ukraine? I mean, the aftershocks of this, some of which are predictable, some of which may be extremely unpredictable.
Yes, and when it comes to the strategic importance of Greenland, I mean, Denmark, it doesn't seem quite the same for Denmark as it is for the United States. Do you agree with that? Is there a strategic interest for the United States? And in your opinion, do you think that it's already basically has the access that it needs without having to take control of the territory?
Yes, absolutely. Like Greenland has been identified as being right on the front line of Arctic security. As more of the ice cap erodes, we are seeing many more countries have access to the Central Arctic. There is a lot of concern that Russia is in a position to expand its own Arctic presence, including potentially in the Atlantic Arctic. But that said, since 1951, the United States has had the ability to place as many military assets on Greenland as it likes. With Greenland being part of the Danish kingdom, Greenland is also a part of NATO. So NATO is also within its rights to expand military capabilities, and that includes monitoring the surrounding waters. So we're back to the question, why would annexing Greenland give the United States more of an advantage than simply using the tools that it has, including within NATO, to build up Greenland's economy, build up the ability to monitor any kind of Russian maritime activity?
And if I could ask you, what's your opinion? What do you think the real reason is here behind this? Is this some kind of ego trip of Donald Trump, something that he wants to put himself into the history books with, or is there something else? I mean, what's your personal opinion on this?
I think some of this is connected to the U.S. national security strategy, which came out last month. And front and center in that document was the idea that the U.S. would be concentrating more on the Western Hemisphere, that there would be some kind of renewed Monroe Doctrine whereby the United States would have a certain degree of hegemony. I think Greenland is factoring into that. And I also think that, especially in light of U.S. actions against Venezuela, that the United States is trying to put forward the idea that we are going to be the overseer of the Western Hemisphere. And certainly there is the possibility that President Trump sees Greenland as a way of expanding American territory and, in his viewpoint, expanding American power.
Is there any way you think that Greenland will eventually agree diplomatically to making some kind of transaction while saving face and not escalating, these trade wars, if you will, so that everybody walks away from this, I guess, as happy as they can?
To put it lightly, it will be complicated. A majority of Greenlanders have said that they do not want to be part of the United States. They want to eventually become independent. There's a bit of domestic difference over the timetable. But the idea of Greenland being transferred to US power simply is not viable for most Greenlanders. Now, again, if there could be some kind of halfway arrangement that would allow for greater American military protection or perhaps some greater investment by the United States in the Greenlandic economy, this is something the Greenland government has been very happy with. Greenland is trying to expand its economic partners with Europe, with the United States, with Canada, Japan, and others. So certainly in that sense, Greenland would not be unhappy if there was greater American investment. But the constant line that we're getting out of the Trump government is that doesn't seem to be enough. He argues that for national security, whatever that means, the United States needs to actually own Greenland, and that's where the illogic kicks in.
Right. Well, it definitely seems that this process is still very far from over. I'd like to thank you, Marc Lanteigne from the Arctic University of Norway, for joining us on World Talks. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes this edition of World Talks. Thanks for joining us, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.